Hello, everyone. Since this is either a highlight, a standalone book, or the first episode in a series, I'm jumping in to remind you what the rules are for this podcast. First rule is, no real people stories. That means that any details from our own lives are merely anecdotal. We do not read books about real people, and we are not reading historical fiction. The second rule is that we are basing our analyses off of how the author treats characters and what they put them through. We are not judging the accuracy of the trauma, the accuracy of any actual conditions that may be portrayed, nor the authenticity of a character's reaction to that trauma or that particular condition. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. The hosts are not trained professionals, and their opinions come solely from personal experience. In this episode, we discuss fictional depictions of trauma and violence that may not be suitable for all audiences. Please take care of yourselves. Specific content warnings for each episode can be found in the show notes. Events in the media are discussed in approximate order of escalation. This episode contains spoilers.
Nicole.
And I'm Robin, and today on Books That Burn, we are discussing The Marrow Thieves by Cherie Dimaline, or Dimaline. For our factions, there's a lot of characters, so we're just listing some of them. We have Frenchie, Mig, Wab, Minerva, Riri, Rose, Frenchie's dad, and Isaac. Our first topic is food scarcity. So they're basically walking to try and stay alive and not get killed the whole book.
I mean, even without them walking.
Yeah.
Every backstory chronically the way that they as a group are treated individually and as a culture, they're just not handed the resources to survive. Like our point of view character, Frenchie, was hungry every scene we've ever seen him in, even as like a small child. So they're just not being given the resources to survive, and that includes food. Yep.
And then like they are hunting, they're scavenging, but like, you know, like it's scarce all around. I mostly mentioned that they're walking because it means that they're not really in a position to be able to like store a bunch of food if they had a windfall.
I mean,
or at least it's harder because anything they wanted to store, they'd have to carry while continuing to move for the majority of the book.
Something I actually think is important to touch on in this topic. So we've had other books. There's a couple in particular that we really talked about this with, where Robin and I had a difficult time reading them because of the way that food scarcity was handled. And this is not saying that those books are bad. This is saying that, like, from a reader perspective, we had a difficult time with other books. Robin, before I tell you my experience with this book, how was that for you reading this one?
Well, keeping in mind that I did read this more than a month ago, you said we should do food scarcity as a topic, and I was like, oh yeah, sure, we can do that. I'm pretty sure it's our minor topic and not one of our two major ones. And Nicole's like, it was constant. And I'm like, oh, I believe you, but it wasn't repeatedly triggering for me in a way that other books have been.
This book, I thought, did an excellent job of just making it a thing without making the reader experience it. So I finished this book yesterday. No, that's not true. It's now Sunday morning. I finished it 2 days ago. But I read this book pretty much all in one day. I started at about 9 a.m. in the morning, and I was done by about 1 p.m. in between other things. In comparison, there is another book that we have covered that is maybe a little longer than this one, I think. I don't have them right in front of me to compare, but I had to stop reading about every 20 minutes and leave, and I had to read this book with like chips next to me that I was slowly eating because otherwise I was not okay physically reading it.
Yeah. And that's not this.
That is absolutely not this. This, you are always aware the entire book that they are very hungry and that they have very little, but you aren't experiencing, the wording is such that like, you know they're hungry because the character is like, okay, we're still hungry. All right, we're going to go get food. Hungry still. All right. But it's not this character panic. It's not this focus on how good things would taste if you had them. It's not, you know, it's not like this character's like, we have to eat things that are not rotting and not rancid. But you're not spending time describing how bad that rot can get.
Yes. That is definitely a distinction. Just like, we'll obviously get to this in the wrap up, but just overall, this felt just filled with so much care on all the topics.
Oh yeah, in general,
as much
yes,
as was possible.
But this one specifically, this is something where like it's hard to write a book that both conveys exactly how bad that food loss is without making it be triggering to somebody who has had a similar thing in the past. And this book did a great job. And at no point did you ever go, yes, they have been fed. Like, there's like one point where they get like enough food that they're just fed. And you know that it's happening and you feel really good for them. And it conveys that feeling really, really well. But even then, they focus on like the two things that they eat that they really like the taste of for our main character. They don't spend time with the character just, and tomorrow we shall be hungry again and it will feel like this. Like, that doesn't happen. And
you know, everyone's thresholds for this are different. And it's possible that, you know, your threshold is even lower than what ours apparently is, and that this still will be like stressful for you. That is absolutely possible. But having read books that were so having read a particular series that was so stressful that we had to pause and record the other topics on a different day. At the time.
Yeah, we did actually have to do that.
This isn't like that.
We did food scarcity one day with the plan of doing all of them and went, no, actually, never mind. We're not talking anymore now. Goodbye.
Yeah. So with this, it feels more like this is part of the logistics that we have to do. And it matters, and it is frequently on the characters' minds. But I don't know, it's just...
But it's not a thing that our characters just spend pages contemplating. It's a thing that our character goes, yes, look, okay, I'm still hungry. And here's the thing I'm doing. I feel like that's the other thing, too. Okay, that's another big difference that I want to highlight. And I'm not, again, there's multiple books that we're talking about here. We're not comparing any one particular thing. But in a lot of books, it's very tempting to like, I say this because it seems like it's just a thing people do. Maybe that's not right as an author. Maybe people just make a choice deliberately, but like, it seems like the easy temptation is to just describe how the hunger feels. And, they found food. Okay. Well, now they're hungry again. And then you describe how hungry feels again and again and again and again. Whereas this book, it was, okay, cataloging. Yes, I am still hungry. Yes, I still feel like this. This is similar to that other time when also I had something that was spoiled or poisoned. Okay, now what am I doing about it? And then it's, okay, well, the thing I'm going to do about it is that the character is going to sleep, or the character is going to go find a different thing to eat, or the character is going to give their food to another person because that person is 5,
more
7,
at
like
point.
Very small. And you know, so there's a lot more of like, okay, we are still hungry. This is accurate. However, here's the thing that I am doing in that moment because of or connected to that hunger. And it's not just somebody sitting there going, hungry, tummy hurts, my legs, like that. It's a big difference.
Yep.
Those are mostly the things that I had on this topic. I thought that was important because that's not a thing that we talk about all the time, but when we do, it's a big deal for us reading it. And I thought that was, this is a good one to recommend, where if that is a thing for you and you like reading books that do a good job, highly, highly recommend this one.
And when we get into our biggest topic, I will talk about this more. But like this book is not it is officially speculative fiction, not marketed as a dystopia, and it made me rethink how I read certain kinds of dystopias. And the way it handled food scarcity is of a kind with the kind of epiphany thought things that I had. But I will definitely talk about that much more in our third topic. All right. Our second topic is PTSD.
Robin, can you just tell our audience your initial question and reaction when I suggested this topic?
Was my basic question, and so that Nicole knows, my thought behind it was, is it PTSD or CPTSD? Okay. Was whether or not flashbacks were involved.
But you asked about flashbacks and that immediately made me think about how that's very common. That's a very common depiction of this thing, regardless of PTSD or CPTSD. It doesn't matter what the author intended. Flashbacks are the go-to for displaying this trauma.
Like, if you need to convey that your character had what we have previously called Hollywood PTSD, you put in flashbacks. This isn't that.
No.
And the extremely brief difference between PTSD and CPTSD. CPTSD doesn't have any one individual inciting incident, whereas PTSD much more classically does. That's the extremely brief, I am not a psychiatrist distinction between the two.
Yeah, CPTSD is compounding or multiple events or over a long period of time.
Yep. Where you can't say, oh, that was the thing that gave me this.
That was the moment. You can't do that.
If you can't do that, but yeah, definitely have PTSD, it's probably CPTSD.
Well, I mean, but that distinction doesn't even matter for our discussion, I think.
Oh, sure. There's no individual event to flashback.
Well, no, that's not true, though. There is. Okay.
I guess there's the
This is why I'm saying it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because the author doesn't give us enough things that we, as uneducated laymen, who can give that distinguishing characteristic. And also, it doesn't matter for our discussion. Because the thing that I think is important to talk about with this topic is not only that it's not flashback focused, but a big thing that this character, and to be clear, the PTSD label we are putting on, we're talking about our main character, our Frenchie, our point of view character. And a thing that happens so much in about 5 to 10 pages for this character over and over and over is this character is waiting. This character is in a good spot for a moment. We're not going to actually elaborate on what that is because spoilers. But this character is in a good spot for a while. For about 10 pages, this character is continually over and over and over expecting and waiting for things to happen again. This character is unable to relax and can't figure out why. And this character is like, happiness? No. I don't like it. Feels weird. And everyone don't want to engage. People are laughing. People are dying. How can you laugh? Like, it's a very... That's overdramatic representation of even what happens. But like, this character is just moody and unable to really sit down and be with other people. And is upset that people are happy when like another character is potentially in danger, they think, for now. And like, he just can't. And at a certain point, we have other characters who call them out and are like, hey, you've been really different in the last couple of days. We are able to relax. Why are you worse now that we're, trying to relax? And then another character asks this character what it is they're hoping to find that they're still looking for. And this character gets so angry because how dare you? What do you mean I'm, and they're angry not because they're asked the question, but they're angry because that question they think has an obvious answer and they don't understand why it's even a thing that they should be asked. They're so upset at the idea that, like, maybe they're the only one who is, XYZ. They're the only one who's still paying attention. They're the only one who's still alert. They're the only one who's still angry. They're the only one who's still upset. They're the only one who's still sad. And, like, that's not true. And it's objectively not true in the pages. Like, other characters are depicted as feeling the same way. But this character feels like the things that are happening to them are still happening and is angry and upset that they don't know what to do when something seems better than that.
Because they're like,
there's like 10 pages of this and
on alert.
Yeah. Because they're still, that's the thing is, like, they're still, and now, to be fair, their circumstances are not over. Like, this is not better. But, like, that's the whole point, is that they can't even sit down and spend like 2 or 3 days with other people not expecting to die. They can't do it.
I mean, like, there definitely are ways where, like, that current situation is better, but, like, with the giant problem, the overarching huge problem is not solved.
Right, but, like, they can't even sit down and just enjoy eating with their friends because, oh my God, we're all around the fire.
I mean, we were talking about, like, food scarcity. They can't even enjoy a little bit where it doesn't feel scarce.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure, like, the group has to be careful, but, like, they're not dealing with so many of these other things that they have been dealing with for, like, the rest of the book until then. And there's no, just emotionally, they're not ready to pause being vigilant for a second. And it's, the group is vigilant, but like, part of that is that as individuals, they're finally in a place where, like, they can, be on shifts for whatever kind of watch is needed, both, like, literally and emotionally. And Frenchie just can't.
Well, and that's the thing that really, like, struck me about this is, like, this character is constantly angry that other people aren't, quote unquote, taking this seriously. But, like, the entire camp is preparing and training and looking after each other and fixing things and getting ready to tackle the problems that Frenchie is, like, emotionally sure that they're avoiding. Like, nobody is ignoring this. Nobody is, quote unquote, moving on, whatever. Like, that's not happening. But that's not how that trauma works.
Yeah.
And this character is just unable for, like, a while to even grapple with that, even a little bit.
And also,
and it's compounded by some other things that are, like, being dealt with and whatever, but, like, we just see over and over this character is just angry and upset because they don't know what else to be or what else to do.
And, like, he went from being in this very small group where the group is so small enough that even the fact that the very youngest kids weren't necessarily, and sometimes were, on, like, vigilant and, like, concerned or whatever, went from being in a group that was so small that literally one member not being up on things would mess up everything, to having that safety net. Yeah. He just
having,
can't,
like, I think, 50 people in their group.
Something.
Yeah. Like, if you have 50 people in the group, if all of your band of 10 is not on watch that night, like, that's not a problem. You have enough other people there that, like, that's okay. They can cover that gap. It's not a gap at that point, even. You're just have different people that are, responsible for your safety. But, like, this character takes a look around their own little tiny group fire and goes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We're gonna die. And that's it.
Right.
And then their way of dealing with that, because they know that that's not actually true, is just getting angry and yelling at their friend and then leaving. Like, well, okay. There isn't anything else there that they can do about it, and they don't know what to do with that.
And this is one of those where, like, trying to have the perspective of, like, the author picked this trauma for the characters, and they, characters don't hurt characters. Well, it completely makes sense with everything that has happened to this character so far that they would be unable to just instantly switch to relaxing and in this way. And I
would argue too,
sense.
None of the other characters switch to relaxing. That's not a thing that happens.
Oh no, but he thinks that
they are. Yeah.
Right. So like he's wrong. It's not like they all were like party town. Like they just, aren't doing something during, I don't know, the 10 minutes that he sees them around the fire at camp, because the rest of the time they were up doing stuff for the thing.
Right. Like they were actually doing all the things that he's in his own head accusing them of not doing. I mean, and okay, to be clear, I'm not saying this character sits down in the book and lists everybody is terrible and people are
no.
Like that's not what's happening. But we just see over and over them just getting angry. And also the thing that I think is important that is noted in the book a couple times, I can even get page numbers if we want me to, is that this character gets suddenly angry and has a line that's like, I'm not even angry about this. What is happening to me? Whatever. But that thing of they're not actually angry because they're angry and they don't know why it's happening. And they also don't know what to do with it because they weren't ready for it. That's a whole thing. And it's just depicted so well in this book.
Yeah.
And for me personally, that experience is super, super familiar. And I read that and went, oh yeah, that is how that happens. Cool. Because that's not normally how that's depicted.
All right, our last topic is cannibalism. Okay, I do not want to get into an internet fight over whether the settlers were literally eating the indigenous people.
We don't know at this point.
Yeah, we don't know.
We've not been given that information.
We don't know if they're eating them. We don't know if they're turning it into medicine. If you'd like to quibble about the distinction between those two, I point you towards the history of medical cannibalism, as a thing. Even if you turn things into medicine, it still counts as cannibalism.
Yeah.
So,
but we are calling it this because we don't have a different, better definition for it, and it does fit that definition.
Yep, absolutely. So, the way this was handled in the context of speculative fiction, and shockingly, not classified as a dystopia, and, having read it, I think very rightly so. This made me rethink how I, read and approach body commodification dystopias as, a thing. Because if I, told you that they're taking people's bone marrow, there are literal factories referred to where things are being processed. In most dystopias, you'd get a view of the factory.
Yeah.
And here you don't. It's not there's a talking about how the author handled this topic, there's a lack of voyeurism.
Yes.
That is refreshing and palpable and just so different from a lot of the other stuff that I've read. And I think part of that is this thing where you didn't need to have a story about how specific it was that how awful it was that a specific person has been hurt by this in order for it to be horrible. There is that. We do get those specific stories, but it's not, here you must empathize with a person, and then they are put into the murder machine of doom, and now you can be super duper upset that a murder machine of doom exists. No, it's not like that. And this was just so, that approach was so just transformative and refreshing for me to read, having read and enjoyed a lot of other dystopias, especially ones that I would classify as body commodification dystopias, some of which we have covered. So one of the things that we know is happening in the book is that, like, the basic premise of it being the Marrow Thieves, the thing that's in the title is that there's this thing where because of climate change, woobity woo, this is speculative fiction, settlers have lost the ability to dream, but indigenous people can still dream. And settlers can, and for some reason it messes the settlers up so much that they can't dream, that they're dying. Again, I refer you to speculative fiction. As someone who doesn't dream a ton, I'm like, I don't know if I'd noticed that I'd stopped dreaming, but like, whatever. Okay.
As someone who didn't do REM sleep more than once a week for most of my life, you'll be fine.
Yeah. We're not saying get rid of your REM sleep, but like, okay, cool.
But also,
speculative
like,
fiction. This is the premise. Yeah. All right. And so then they start, they figure out that indigenous people are still dreaming, and they decide that the solution to this is to kill the indigenous people and take their bone marrow so that they can ingest it somehow and use it to be able to keep dreaming. And it's like, that's the premise, which, and we don't, like, follow the settlers doing the thing. We don't, we know there's murder factories that are, converted from the the real world existing school things. But anyway, this is handled without needing a factory tour in order to make us empathize with the people being murdered. And just is really good. And one of the things that's happening is, like, they get, so, like, if you need to not have the description of the little that is shown in the actual book, this is where you should exit. We'll catch you in the wrap up. And we're getting into spoiler territory here. But so that there's a bit midway through where someone who has been trying to find he's been trying to find his husband, and he knows that he was taken to one of these factories, and he finds a jar of marrow labeled with information consistent with his husband's, and he's like, okay, all right, I found him and he's dead, and, like, that's it. But in terms of, like, trying to find him, but also he takes the jars and pours out the marrow into water. I don't remember if it was a lake or a river. A river, yeah. Pours the marrow out to give them, like, some kind of end that isn't cannibalism.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's this, just, that is the closest we get to seeing the factories, is someone, like, intercepting a truck exiting one of the factories. I don't think that a story about when that person intercepted this truck and did this thing, because it happened, like, before the main events of the book. Yeah, and it just it centers the victims of this as just people, because they are. And, like, if you're thinking, like, oh no, this is totally how any book, like, dealing with this topic should be, I'm like,
yeah,
generally speaking, yeah, I agree. I also hadn't come across it before.
I mean, this is a big reason why I generally don't read dystopias.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't like that it's not interesting.
Yeah.
It's not fun. There's nothing about it that I want to read. If your character is just like, you just get to like 3D zoom on all of the things that make them suffer forever, and that's the whole story, and that's it. Like, I just find that really, really boring for me personally. So like, reading this, I was like, no, I actually like this book. I actually really like this book. And It is absolutely a dystopia novel, but also, it actually felt like there was a thing that we were doing, if that makes sense. Like, and I realize that that's like, again, like Robin was saying, like kind of the point of a lot of dystopia novels, but like, it doesn't have to be. And it was nice to read a book that, took those things with a little more, like, I don't want to say care explicitly, because I'm not saying dystopia novels don't, but like, just treated it differently and treated your reader like they didn't have to experience it with you.
Yeah. And, if as someone in the audience, your immediate reaction is, but that's what I like about dystopias, and like this book, calm down. This book isn't shelved with the dystopias.
It's
so
not?
Like,
oh, interesting.
No, it's not. It's shelved as speculative fiction, not dystopia.
I see.
Yeah, and I think this difference in its approach is from my like, I was not involved in categorizing it perspective. That's probably part of that difference, is the way it doesn't have that voyeurism.
Right.
And also the way it's 30 minutes in the future, as part of the premise is also definitely part of what makes it speculative fiction. Yeah. So, but the fact that like Nicole's like, oh wait, it's not grouped for the dystopias.
I
and I'm
assumed
like,
it would be.
No, it's not. But it is, and then, gosh, I want to spoil the ending so bad. I will not spoil the ending.
Mm-hmm.
I won't.
Okay,
it's lovely. It's lovely, and I just really, really like it. And I'm ready for the wrap up, because I want to talk about how much care this had with stuff.
Hi, I'm Matt, aka Stormageddon, and I'm the host of CPOV Autographs at certainpov.com. It is a bi-weekly interview series where I interview folks from all over the arts, from writers to comedians to magicians to musicians, even actors, historians, podcasters, pretty much anyone who's willing to chat with me for a little bit. If you like interesting conversations with even more interesting people, go to certainpov.com or wherever you get your podcasts. And remember, music is life, and life is good.
Hello, on to the wrap up and ratings. For the gratuity rating for food scarcity, there's a lot of very small mentions.
Yeah, it's definitely not mild.
Yeah,
it's not.
I'd say moderate.
Moderate works for me.
Yeah, like it's frequent. So if the level that's happening,
yeah,
that it's not very much, but frequently, if that's too much, okay, it's too much, but I don't think it's severe overall.
Actually, no, I think there are a couple of scenes that are more severe.
Okay.
I think the gratuitous would have been the other series that we had looked at before. So, right. I mean, it's definitely not that. I'm just saying, like, I think that's what we labeled it before. I think there are specific scenes that are severe, but I think that the overall is moderate, so maybe severe.
Okay, you want to put it as severe? Okay.
Yeah.
For the PTSD,
this is pretty severe.
Yeah. It
takes more care, which we'll get to, but it's severe.
Yeah. It's a quieter style, but it's very present and instantly recognizable if this is the one you have. It's just not the Hollywood version. For cannibalism,
this is severe.
It's severe. I will say, given what the word cannibalism means, we don't have literal scenes of it happening,
scenes of it
but
happening,
in pretty much every other way it is severe. Then, are the traumas integral, interchangeable, or irrelevant? I think that the food scarcity is integral to the plot. Like this,
Yeah.
if they'd been doing what they were doing and they never had to worry about food, it would completely break immersion in the book.
I don't think it would break immersion, but I think it would be a very different
For me,
book.
it would.
And
It'd be a very, very different book.
And they make a lot of decisions based on food is another thing. Like, just considering, like, there's a couple of scenes where they wouldn't have done a certain thing if they had enough food, or they wouldn't have gone and rested a certain place if they didn't have enough food, or, you know. So it's definitely an affecting factor in how the book actually works.
Yes. Yeah. Definitely integral. All right. The PTSD.
I think this is actually interchangeable.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, some kind of reaction makes sense. It didn't need to be this. It didn't need to be in this way. Yeah.
There's other characters that we see that have different reactions that...
Yes.
There's other things that this character could have had that would have caused similar outcomes.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Interchangeable all around. For the cannibalism...
Integral.
It is integral.
It's the plot.
Yeah.
It's the whole premise of the book.
Yeah, it's the whole point of it. Now I'm trying to think if we've ever had a book where the topic that was ostensibly the whole point we ended up rating as interchangeable or irrelevant.
We have.
I don't know, but this one is not that.
We have.
Nicole looks at spreadsheet. Oh, yes, we have.
Nicole does not need to look at the spreadsheet. Nicole remembers books that we got to the end and we're like, wow, none of that needed to happen, huh? Like, that's happened.
This is definitely integral. All right, our by now less brand new but still new-ish rating. How clear is the moral directionality?
Oh wait, no, we're not there yet.
Sorry, whoops, you're right. Was the trauma treated with care?
Yeah, Robin, we talked about this in the topics. That doesn't mean we've covered it already.
That's true.
I'm assuming that's what happened there.
It's probably mentally.
Food scarcity. I want to say enough.
Yeah.
I mean, like, this is a difficult one. This definitely falls in those categories of, like, you can't really have care and still have it really be depicted.
Yeah.
And this is not just, I'm hungry today. Like, it's not just that. Like, there's actual, like, people that have symptoms of being hungry. But it's taken with care so in pretty much every other way.
Yeah. Then for the PTSD, I think it was treated with care.
Yeah, I'm either between just yes and enough, somewhere in there.
I mean, if I'm
here's my argument.
What?
Here's my argument for why it is enough and not yes.
Okay.
There was the thing that would have pushed it over into just yes for me would have been our character on screen actively tackling and working on it. And I don't mean in like a you're going to be healed today kind of way. I mean, like, if we had seen this character actively recognize that, oh, okay, the thing that I'm doing, the way that I'm reacting, this is not, and redirecting themselves or taking steps to, have safe care for themselves or anything like that, I think would have pushed it over into yes. Instead, we just see this character just have these reactions, and the reactions themselves are treated with care, but the concept of it, somebody reading this book, I look at it and go, yeah, that happens to me. But like, let's say you're reading that and you don't have a way of coping with it. You're just going to go, yes, me too. Okay, well, now what?
Right.
So I think it's enough, but I don't think it's yes, because our character is just kind of having it happen to them, which is its own brand of not enough, if that makes sense.
Yes, that makes sense. Okay, we can call that enough. Then for the cannibalism...
I also, for the record, real quick, I don't think that making that happen in this particular book would have made any sense. I'm not saying anything should be different. I'm just saying that doesn't push it over into just care.
Sure.
And I know that there's more to the series and I haven't read it yet. So if that happens in a future book in the series, then awesome. But yeah, just it didn't happen yet. So
Grimoire has lots of opinions. Most of them are about how the door is closed, but she says hi.
Grimoire has what?
Lots of opinions.
Oh, opinions. Okay.
She has so many opinions. Okay. For the cannibalism, I
don't know if this is not going to be yes because you can't.
Yes. Right.
It's not going to be no.
Right.
It's hard. It's hard with this topic because I think if I personally, as a human being, am the reader, I think it was treated with enough care. But I have no actual cultural or personal history with anything that this book is pulling from. And like, I want to say not enough because I think that it directly references and correlates certain things in history that are extremely triggering and extremely traumatic. Yes. So I think not enough, but like not because it was a bad experience for me personally reading it.
Yeah, like one if the very premise is triggering for you, it's just not a book.
I mean,
for you.
I would say even without the premise, I'm not going to list spoilers here, and I'm not going to reference these things, but like, you know,
sure.
there are particular historical, actual real life things that are not supposed to happen anymore that in the book were restarted to assist with the book's premise.
Yes.
So like, I think that it has to be not enough because I don't think either of us is qualified to say that it is enough. And so, you know, to couch that, I would say not enough, agree. But I also think that like, this is going to be your mileage may vary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not enough, but we are also absolutely not in a position to say what would have been enough. Yeah. That's just not our lane. All right, now we're finally getting to the moral directionality. Okay, so I think the moral directionality in terms of like the macro stuff is extremely clear.
Yes.
You know,
but can I guess what you're going to say?
Yeah, you can quibble over whether like certain tactical decisions, like they have like within the group there is uncertainty over what they should be doing in a given situation.
I actually want to push back on that because I don't think the decisions on what they should be doing are moral decisions. I think they're just practical decisions.
Okay.
So like, I mean, yeah, sure. Maybe we should or shouldn't, you know, stop now or go another hour, but that's not a moral decision.
Oh no, I just, especially later on in the book, some of their tactics like have different moral implications. But I do think overall the book is very clear. Like you don't walk away uncertain about what.
Yeah, I don't think that any of those. I don't think that any of those tactics with moral implications. I don't think they actually like give us a muddled story of the morality of the characters. I don't, or the book itself. Like I don't think that happens. I think it's just characters grappling with what they can and can't do. If that makes sense. Like, I don't actually think that affects our book rating.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking it was muddy. I was more pondering whether it was maybe tangled, but like, nah.
I don't think so.
It's clear.
Yeah. Because even when a character, without spoilers, even when a character does something that could theoretically be not great, like, that character is not okay with it. Like, it's not, even if they're making decisions that aren't as nice, like, they're not exactly like, yeah, this is fine. Like, that doesn't happen.
It's the moral and the practical colliding, not an uncertain view of what the moral thing was in the situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. All right. The point of view for the trauma and aftermath. So generally speaking, it's Francis. It's Frenchie for the whole thing. But there are sections where people tell their own stories. And so those individual sections are from the perspective of the person who lived through that trauma for the duration of that story.
I'm writing Frenchie / flashback.
Yeah.
Because, you know, but it's still, even when after that flashback is over, it's still Frenchie's experience of hearing it that we get. So it's
Right.
just still all him.
We're getting whatever thoughts the person decided to voice out loud.
Yes.
All right. Which also then means that the aftermath is Frenchie, because it's what he's seeing for everybody. All right, for trope spotter, the trope is walking the earth. Sorry, no, I changed my mind. No, okay, I did go with. I considered You Can't Go Home Again, and I think that one is irrelevant, but not quite right as a trope. But for bonus points, that one's also in play. But yeah, walking the earth, I think fits this one pretty well. Both in some of them are journeying to try and find things, and also that they're literally doing a bunch of walking for most of the book.
Yeah, that's fair.
All right. What was your favorite non-traumatic thing about the book?
Oh, boy. I enjoyed actual, practical, realistic hunting as a group techniques. Descriptions of ways that they were walking and why, descriptions of doing it well or badly, descriptions of just how to actually practically look for food in the wilderness, in a way that makes sense and tracks with my limited real world experience. And not every book does that. A lot of books are just, we hunted and got food.
Right. My favorite non-traumatic, or rather I might say restorative part about the book is the ending, which I will not spoil, but I really, really love the ending. It's great, especially when I was really worried about what was going on with I'm trying to remember if it was the only queer character or at least the main queer character.
Yeah.
And
there's a couple. There's a couple.
I really, really love how it ends, and I don't want to say more without spoilers. Grimoire, don't spoil the book. All right.
Grimoire's but why? I want to speak. Give me voice.
All right. So I think that's going to do it for the Marrow Thieves. I am absolutely planning to read the sequel. So good. So good. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll catch you in a fortnight. All music used in this podcast was created by Nicole as Heartbeat Art Co. and is used with permission. Our transcriptionist is Heather. Follow her on Twitter at MamaDragon20. We're proud members of the Certain Point of View Network. Find all the CPOV shows at www.certainpov.com. You can contact us on Twitter at BooksThatBurn or by email at booksthatburn@yahoo.com. Please consider leaving us a tip at ko-fi.com/booksthatburn or becoming a monthly supporter on patreon.com/booksthatburn. All patrons get access to our upcoming book list, bonus content, including the second half of all interviews, and will receive a one-time shout-out. To get updates on our written reviews, recent episodes, and newly completed transcripts, subscribe to our fortnightly newsletter at buttondown.email/booksthatburn. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Pandora, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Please leave us a review wherever you're listening. This helps people to find the show. Thanks for listening. We'll be back in 2 weeks.